If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, the most important function that white supremacy carries out for those who benefit from it is to deceive those who are oppressed by it. Malcolm pointed out that with skillful manipulation of their media, they can turn the perpetrators into the victims and make the victims seem like the perpetrators. You see, if you're going to forge together the will of a malevolent majority, what you got to do is you got to make sure that they have the same script. And the script is that they are the ones who are being attacked. They are the ones who are under siege. They are the ones who are being oppressed or mistreated by the very people who they have impoverished and brutalized daily. Of course, it's not real. It's not true. But the point is, everybody who's in on it, everyone who benefits from a particular system of oppression, they understand that there are some necessary fictions that they're going to have to use in order to justify what they're doing. Yeah, they know what they're doing is wrong, but they're going to use some weasel words and some pre-canned talking points to try to justify it. On the plantations, Massa couldn't be held responsible just because he would go jaunting off to the slave quarters every chance he got to go have his way with some of the female slaves. Why, those dark-skinned Jezebels, they were tempting Massa, don't you know? Massa was just a good, upstanding white man who never worked a day in his life, and if it wasn't for those Jezebels tempting him beyond that which he could withstand, why, he would never have been unfaithful to his wife. Why, those black slaves, they were the ones in charge of the plantation, not Massa. Massa was their helpless prisoner, don't you know? This is the way that the dominant society has tried to portray all of those mulatto children who the slave masters had. Well, that was the slaves who were responsible for that. It surely wasn't anything that Massa did because he was a good moral man. And as for those lynchings, why, those lynchings were all justified. If those black men had simply kept their hands, or rather their eyes, to themselves, I mean, no good upstanding white woman would ever lie about such a thing. Right? And they're certainly not responsible for the hyper-incarceration of black people. Why, it's black people who are just causing so much trouble, you see. Police brutality is actually black people's fault. It's black people. Why? Black people make these people into racists. Why? They make us racists. Isn't that what Megyn Kelly and Bill Maher were saying last week? It's black people who make white folks into racists. It's not that they were racist in and of themselves, or that their culture, the culture of the dominant society, is racist. No. See, it's your attempts to try to tell them that they're racist. That's what makes them racist, don't you know? And so, part of this completely fictional vocabulary happens to involve terms like political correctness, or these days, cancel culture, something that does not exist. Were you talking about any other facet of the society, what they would say is, well, if you got some black person who gets canceled, that's the free market at work. There's no cancel culture where black people are concerned. It's the free market at work. Oh, it's the result of a number of scandals, don't you see? Oh, it's just the natural workings of society. On the other hand, if it's something that the white supremacists don't like that has some pressure put on, what? This is cancel culture. It's censorship, don't you know? Gee, we didn't hear them talking like that about Bill Cosby or about 2 Live Crew. The word censorship never comes up where black people are concerned. When black folks are the ones who are being censored, nobody calls it censorship. When black people are the ones whose rights are being infringed upon, nobody ever raises the First Amendment. So understand that cancel culture doesn't exist. It's a lie. And it's not even a new one. White supremacy relies heavily on deception and on getting those who it oppresses to deceive themselves into inaction, or better yet, deceive themselves into collaborating in their own oppression. This is the reason white supremacy uses proxy wars so much. They understand when they need to be direct, and when it's too risky, they decide to get other people or to have substitute ideas that stand in for them. See, white supremacy will use people, or it will use ideas as weapons. It certainly proved that it could use religion as a weapon. Vietnam was an example of using a proxy to fight your war. And this phony outrage over cancel culture, which doesn't even exist, is just another example of a proxy war. This is about insulating white supremacy from the cultural changes that the black grassroots are forcing upon the nation. And the white supremacists have made it clear they're targeting the young with this propaganda. Then again, they have to. So we see all this anger and rage over what would ordinarily be seen as trivial, even foolish media like video games, comic book movies, and children's books. Which of course brings us to the case of Theodore Geisel, the man who called himself Dr. Seuss. What a shrieking fraud that was. First of all, Ted Geisel wasn't even a doctor. He simply called himself that because that's what his father wanted him to do, and because he was white. The publishers just put doctor on there anyway. Now that's wrong. That's fraudulent. When you have doctor in front of your name and you haven't actually gotten a doctorate, the whole point is it undermines and erodes the legitimacy and the authority that goes along with having a PhD. See, having a doctor in front of your name confers a certain amount of authority. It confers that this is a person who's actually taken out the time to study a particular field. There's a lot of legitimacy that goes along with that. Because what it means is you had to actually earn that, and you don't get a doctorate just because you showed up. So when someone decides to bestow the title of doctor upon themselves, shouldn't that have been a scandal? No, it wasn't, of course. Because immunity from the law happens to be the totality of white supremacy. So Ted Geisel started his career as a racist blackface artist. I put artist in quotes. And it was because of this that, just like a lot of other cartoonists, they looked and said, the powers that be in the white media looked and said, okay, this guy is going to be good for the long haul. So they say, we're going to let him get away with calling himself doctor, even though he's not. As a result, he's going to be seen as having legitimacy that most other writers don't have. See, that's white supremacy for you. It bestows legitimacy on people, simply on a whim. And so as a result, here we are, decades and decades later, and you got people saying, oh my God, some Dr. Seuss books aren't going to be published anymore. Oh my God, my childhood has been ruined. If you're 60 years old, and all it took was a couple of Dr. Seuss books to go out of print to ruin your childhood, the only thing that tells me is you never grew up, stupid. And the thing is, you notice how the books were some that you never even heard of. Yeah, the money makers, the ones that actually generate the revenue, like Cat in the Hat and Green Eggs and Ham and The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, the ones that actually make the money, you notice that they're not touching those. So that's basically what this was about. This was a matter of they had a building scandal on their hands because of a book that came out a couple of years ago, was The Cat in the Hat Black. And because of that, they decide we'll go ahead and try to head this one off. Action is taken. We can now hide behind it. And the books that they will no longer publish are books that nobody was reading anyway. But the thing is, you got a whole lot of folks claiming, oh, my kids were raised on Dr. Seuss. Well, your kids were raised on a lie. And it says a lot about you that you didn't ask any questions. But this has become fodder. It's become fodder for the idea of trying to circle the wagons for the dominant society, that we're going to get everybody on code and tell them, oh, the culture is under siege. The culture is under siege. What's under siege? Well, if we can't call you nigger with impunity, if we cannot teach children before they even learn how to read, we're going to be showing them images of you as primitive savages and themselves as normal. It's all of you non-white folks, especially black people, who are abnormal. If we can't teach that, why? The culture is doomed. And what culture is that? The culture of white supremacy. That's what's really at work here. That's what this fight is really about. White supremacy has become normalized, but slowly but surely we are exposing it for the abnormal perversion that it's always been, and you got people trying to hold on to it in a death's grip. And that's where we get made up phony terms like cancel culture from. The goal is to get young people to see the media that they read, watch, and listen to through the lens of a culture war, and to see anything that doesn't promote white supremacy as political correctness or cancel culture. In short, those pesky black folks are trying to ruin your fun. That's what this is really trying to say to them. But of course, their fun happens to be malevolent violence, social violence, economic violence, which of course always leads to physical violence. But an entire society does not just get up one morning and decide that it's going to attack black people. It has to be taught that, continually taught that, from the cradle. You have to have an entire culture that literally from the moment that you're born begins the process of normalizing hatred of black people, seeing black people as lesser than. You got to teach it to them from the cradle. And that's exactly what books like Dr. Seuss's nonsense does. No, as black people, we should not tolerate that stuff being anywhere near a civilized society, certainly not near us. We should only have books that honor us, that honor our children, that respect our children. Books that make it very clear that our children are worthy of respect, starting with self-respect. You shouldn't have books where it teaches that your child is anything other than worthy of being honored. You should never have media that teaches your child to put up with disrespect. And you damn sure shouldn't allow media that teaches others that it's okay to disrespect you. What do you think the arguments we've been having regarding the racist imagery coming out of China has been about? The biggest and loudest arguments about cancel culture haven't been in political circles. They haven't even been in the academic circles. The biggest and loudest arguments about so-called cancel culture, this phony baloney myth that the white supremacists made up, has been in the media. And there's a reason for that. Ideological forces on both the political left and the political right have been using popular culture in particular as a delivery system for their ideologies. The far right, particularly the white supremacist extremists, they've been finding that their ability to be able to bring in new blood hasn't been as robust and vigorous and effective as has been in the past. Mainly because, as they see it, well, the culture has been dulled down by digital toys and such, and we got to get more young white fighters on the front lines of the war against black people. But how do you reach young people these days? Oh, the old days. I mean, you got young folks who are disengaging from the church, young folks who are disengaging from social groups and turning inward and going online. Well, if that's where the young folks are at, that's where we got to find them at. But the thing is, these young folks are spending all their time playing video games and goofing off and immersing themselves in comic books and movies and such so-called geek culture. Well, if that's where the young folks are at, then that's where the white supremacists would go. But what they would do is, since the only thing that these young folks seem to care about happens to be their comic books and their movies and video games, well, that's what we're going to do. We're not going to tell them to worry about the society being taken from them. Hell, they're not concerned about society. They've decided they're going to live in a virtual world. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell them that their virtual world, these little imaginary worlds of theirs that they've decided to live in, that's being threatened. And who's threatening it? The niggers are threatening it. The white right takes the talking points that they had previously been using in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when talking about affirmative action, usually in regards to university admissions or government hiring and such, or government policy. And instead, they just changed the word from universities to movies and TV, video games, and comic books. And instead of the evil encroaching entity being the government, they instead changed it to media companies. Same script, they just changed a couple of words, switched a couple of words out, but the exact same script. Because young people ain't really concerned about getting into universities like that. As far as getting a government job goes, they're not really sweating about that. But you got to hit them in what it seems that they actually care about, or at least something that they'll actually listen to. And this was done for a reason. It's no accident that this is happening. It's by design. The late malignant scumbag Andrew Breitbart, may he rot in hell, said that politics is downstream from culture. And that to change politics, you first have to change the culture. Now, Breitbart's website doesn't do columns so much as it's just a non-stop string of perverted editorials with no factual content, so I wouldn't dare call their asinine scribblings articles. But one editorial on their site said, quote, he, talking about Andrew Breitbart, emphasized that culture was upstream from politics, but in many ways sports has always been upstream from culture. What happens on the playing field often precedes and shapes the very culture that eventually influences the country's politics. The editorial ended by saying, because of mass media, Americans listen to different music, watch different television shows and at different times, read different books, and get their news from a variety of outlets. But sports remains a common culture, as it has always been, and in many instances, it is becoming more so in an age of fragmented media. What occurs in the popular culture shapes the nation's politics. Look no further than sports, though, to see what will influence the dominant culture. Now, that was on Breitbart's website, posted in 2012, 4 years before Colin Kaepernick first took a knee. I want you to think about that. This is what the white right, or the far right, was saying amongst themselves. That's who Breitbart's meant for, is for the white supremacists to be able to talk to each other. And what they were saying was sports happens to be upstream from culture. What they mean by upstream is it's what happens first. And that's what white supremacy is concerned with. That's why Richard Spencer was talking about where's the trend going. See, they're very much concerned about how to keep society under control, but you can't keep society under control if you're always behind the curve. You got to figure out how to initiate social trends. Where do social trends begin? Where do political trends begin? They do not begin in the political arena, or at least not in the electoral arena. See, this is the reason why we've been telling you for the longest time, you're voting backwards. You don't show up on election day and say, who am I going to vote for? No, what you do is you make sure that you put some people on that ballot so that you guide which way the policy goes, as opposed to trying to react to whatever malignant, malevolent tool of the Democrats or Republicans is trying to screw you over today. The bad guys understand that you got to get this thing right, get it in its proper order. But understand, Andrew Breitbart's website was pointing out 4 years before Colin Kaepernick, they were pointing out the importance of making sure that sports culture, that is, black men who are athletes, have to remain under control. You want to know why these right-wing nuts get so ventilated about Colin Kaepernick taking a knee? They just told you why. Or rather, I should say they told you why in 2012. As goes sports, so goes the culture. And with black men as the only athletes people will actually pay money to see, black men potentially are in a position to influence the culture, if they so choose. And please don't think that they are at all happy with the fact that they were so pleased when Donald Trump said the NFL players that they're SOBs for taking a knee, and then next thing you know, Donald Trump loses the election. Please don't think that whenever they look at the NFL, they don't think you're the guys who threw Donald Trump out of the White House. They understand exactly how much potential influence those black men in sports have. So it is important, it is crucial that they be controlled. Though you won't hear any of these right-wing nuts saying that Colin Kaepernick got canceled. Oh no, cancel culture doesn't apply when it's a black person. That's why when the NBA and NFL players started taking a knee, and it became just an affectation where a number of other folks, even athletes who nobody even watches, started doing the same thing, the white right in particular had to attack them. Not that the white left was really given any support, not really. They damn sure weren't giving it the old college try. This isn't about a political gesture or TV ratings or a season's revenues. Sports is a major part of the culture, but so is entertainment. In another Breitbart editorial, this one from 2013, entitled "Obama is Right, Culture is Upstream from Politics," the writer mentioned how then President Obama went on a West Coast tour in November 2013, and Obama made a stop by DreamWorks Studios. While he was there, he lauded the movie industry for the part they played in helping the U.S. to influence the world. Quote, "We have shaped a world culture through you." The Breitbart editorial agreed with Obama that culture is upstream from politics, making the movie industry a key pillar of the culture upstream from politics as well. This is why you see them going into hysterics over Theodore Giesel, the fraudulent doctor, finally being removed, at least from being endorsed. He hasn't really been removed. He ain't been banned. All that's happening is they're no longer going to be having him in a lofty, honorable place. And you see the exact same talking points that were used to defend Confederate statues being dragged out yet again. What does that tell you? You're dealing with the exact same thing. Doesn't matter if it's the Confederacy or Dr. Seuss. Obviously, both of them seem to mean the exact same thing to these white supremacists. See, a major part of keeping people oppressed is you have to occupy the commons. Whatever the areas are that the people claim to think of as belonging to everyone, well, you can't allow that. You gotta plant your flag there, a Confederate flag. You gotta make it clear the commons are going to be defined and owned by a particular group, which of course means there are no commons at all. And that's the entire point. Oh, you like to think of the library as being a house of information? Well, this house of information only contains whatever is conducive to promoting white supremacy. This way, everybody is reminded that this society happens to be the property of a malignant dominant society. And it's no different when it comes to Dr. Seuss. Malcolm told you everything in the society, from TV shows to comic books, are all meant to help reinforce white supremacy and black oppression. And that's the reason why they couldn't get enough of praising the pretend phony Dr. Seuss. I've taught you that the reason white supremacy puts so much emphasis on awards, why awards are so important to them, is because awards are the way that the dominant society confers legitimacy on something. It's a way of giving instant legitimacy without the person or thing being legitimized having to actually earn it. It's how you tell the society, this is what is worthy. This is what is valuable. This is what is important. You give an award to it. Typically, you can only get legitimacy by proving your idea is real, that your idea is valid and practical. Getting your legitimacy, typically that takes time. You have to give evidence. You have to argue with people who disagree with you. Legitimacy requires getting a particular idea or viewpoint in front of as many people as possible, and then talking to them about it, persuading people that what you're presenting them is true and valuable and worthy, and it's something that they themselves should believe and should follow. Remember what I told you the Army's definition of legitimacy is: when a group confers authority on another individual or group. That's important because when people give you legitimacy, what they're also saying is they're going to follow you. Legitimacy is important, especially cultural legitimacy. And while we're busy defining terms, what does culture mean? It's a word that gets bandied around quite a bit, use it all the time, but we rarely ever give a fixed definition to it. Well, if you want to know Professor Truth's own bite-sized definition of culture, I say that it's this: the particular way that a group does things. That's what culture is. It's the way that your group goes about doing things. You have ethnic cultures. You have corporate cultures. You even have a culture of the military. When people say culture, that's basically what culture means in a practical sense. It means the particular way that a group does things. And how do you influence the way that a group does things? You're going to have to gain legitimacy in their eyes. Now, of course, under white supremacy, when you get to monopolize the resources, You can take your fiction and turn it into somebody else's reality, as Jason Black beautifully put it. That gives you an ability to go ahead and leapfrog the usual slow way that true legitimacy has to be earned. You can go ahead and just carpet bomb people with whatever it is you want them to believe and see if it takes hold. That's why, as we saw with the Charlottesville massacre in 2017, the white supremacists pointed out that they've been online in comment sections and such through internet chat rooms, and they got their little forums and such, and they were bragging about how they've been pushing and promoting their memes and why their memes were so important. Why they got to make sure we got to get our memes out there. We've been out there spreading these memes. Well, that's what they were doing. They were very proud of that. And then black people took to the streets in 2020 and showed the white supremacists what real power was. You see, the problem with memes is that memes are only effective on the internet. Forcing policy changes without an election, that's true power. And that's why they saw those white supremacists nutting up. Far as they were concerned, man, these black folks, they just leapfrogged the entire electoral process altogether. You see, that's the problem that these white supremacists have. They're so used to a society that just hands them everything. As Abraham Lincoln put it, I would see the superior position assigned to the white man. Assigned. That means someone gives it to you. See, when you're black, nobody gives you anything. You gotta fight for it. And what that means is we bring a little bit more verve. We bring a little bit more heat to the game when we show up. As opposed to others who come from cultures where they've had everything handed to them. They're used to their goodies, giveaways, and guarantees. But when it comes time to roll up your doggone sleeves, get some sweat on your brow, some dirt under your nails, and hustle for it, then all of a sudden they fall short. Now, folks, I got a love-hate relationship with Trevor Noah, but he was dead on the money when he said it's only cancel culture when the thing getting canceled is something you like. And he was absolutely right about that. I mean, when Cosby was banned, you didn't see any so-called civil libertarians saying a word. Because they understood that this was a black man being used as a proxy for all black people. This was just another reminder that if you're black and you wind up getting scandalized, well, that's where we get to the part where we erase you and say, oh, we cannot even mention you again, because they understand what they're really doing is they're erasing whatever achievement that this black person was able to pull off. Whatever achievement that this black person had earned, well, we're erasing that. Oh, you're America's dad. You've beaten white folks at their own game. Well, we're going to go ahead and put together a ginned up, jerry-rigged trial for you. We'll keep putting you on trial till we finally get something on you. And then we're going to say, oh, we're not even going to wait until the trial even begins. We're just going to go ahead and erase you immediately. Oh, we can't have the Cosby Show anywhere. We must remove it from all platforms. Just simply too grotesque to keep around, too disturbing. Michael Jackson, well, they couldn't exactly do that with him, but it's a matter of, well, we'll go ahead and just use him for a whipping boy, even in death. We'll do that, because what we're doing is we're trying to erase the fact that this black man was able to do what 5 white men put together could not do. So we're trying to erase what he did. We're trying to say that, well, what he did really wasn't so great because of who we say he was. Everybody understands that's exactly what these feeding frenzies against black people, particularly black men, are about. That's what it's really about. It ain't got a damn thing to do with any trumped up charges and everything to do with trying to erase whatever this black person did so that the white powers that be can look and say, okay, well, even if he did whip us 5 ways from Sunday, at the very least, we were able to dirty him up, and that's important. We couldn't beat him, but we were able to dirty him up. So, when it comes time to talk about black folks being canceled, the white left all of a sudden gets on code and gives their silent approval to it. Though some of them went beyond that and gave open support to censorship. But I want you to keep that in mind. Cancel culture ain't anything new. We've been hearing about it for decades. Only thing new is they're hoping if they bang the drum, hopefully it'll mean something to white youth. For decades, the term politically correct was used for everything that angry white people complained about. If a black person was in charge of something in government or business, then it was affirmative action. No matter how successful that black person was in business, no matter how successful their company was. They produced more money than their white peers, but that was still affirmative action. Remember Bill Maher's first little television sideshow? Remember what he called it? Politically incorrect. That was 20 years ago. And the term was old before that washed up funny man began using it. These clowns are recycling the same talking points. The only thing that changes is the word that they use to describe it. This way they can falsely claim that, oh, things have gotten even worse. Why, we have to use new words to describe the siege that these niggers have got us under. Oh, things have gotten worse. We need some new words. Things have gotten worse. No. They're just using new words for the exact same lie. They know as well as everyone else that nothing has changed at all. Of course, we all know what the real problem is. Black people assert themselves and make it clear that we will be respected. Black people don't just take disrespect, and that sets the white supremacist off. Because if black people aren't willing to let people talk about us any old kind of way, then that also means we're going to stop them from treating us any old kind of way too. There's a reason why they get so upset about things that are happening in children's books and movies and such. Entertainment is important to white supremacy because of the place that it occupies in any culture. Entertainment is significant to political struggles because entertainment is based on the principle of turning your brain off and just taking in whatever you're watching or listening to without thinking. See, when people sit down to be entertained, what goes unsaid is they are placing their minds in a more receptive state. And that's especially true in this day and age when so much of the culture is geared around entertainment. The video games are more immersive and lifelike than they've ever been. The TV shows, at least the writing and plotting of the TV shows, are more sophisticated and more engrossing than they've ever been. There's a reason why these long-form dramatic cable shows and the ones that are on streaming services, why they claim that these shows are addictive. It's because these shows are meant to be, to a certain degree, to resonate with reality, to have a certain amount of high verisimilitude to them. They even use that phrasing in the marketing, such and such show, your new addiction, etc. Oh yes, entertainment is quite important, especially in a decadent culture like the United States. This is why it matters to the white supremacists. If they are able to get their hooks in, if they're able to push and promote their ideology effectively and use entertainment as the hook for it, a hook to get you interested, a hook to get your attention. Oh, we're talking about such and such a show, but they're not really talking about the show at all. What they're doing is they're pushing their racist ideology and just using the show as a frame, a skeleton to hang their talking points on. The white supremacists are being challenged on every front in the real world. So they've been reduced to retreating to demand that they still be in charge of these imaginary worlds. They want an island, even if it doesn't exist. They're demanding that the entertainment industry give them a safe space where they can see white males in particular in total dominance. Just the mere hint that the playing field could be leveled traumatized them. This entire country is a safe space for white supremacy. The Republicans will praise that, and the Democrats will pretend that there's nothing they can do about that. It's why the insurrectionists at the Capitol weren't scared of the government coming after them. You've seen the Republicans boldly stand behind the coup attempt. Hell, you had a congressman from Arizona who decided that he was going to go hang out with Nick Fuentes for the day. Yeah, who cares about his congressional duties? What really matters is letting the white supremacists know you've got some inside men inside the U.S. Congress. These traitors who tried to storm the Capitol, they knew that all they had to do was make it clear that they were on a mission for white supremacy, and that at least 50% of the government would openly defend them, and the other half of the government would know not to come down on them. There's only been, comparatively speaking, out of the thousands and thousands of people who overran the Capitol, there's only been about a couple hundred arrests. Hell, you got more than that at a Black Lives Matters rally. And they didn't overrun any government buildings. That's the old white supremacist two-step, and both parties are dancing to that tune. All this pretend outrage over Dr. Seuss, over this or that movie or TV show or the NFL, it's all a fraud. These white supremacists, they don't believe in anything, not science, not philosophy, not even God. Because under white supremacy, those classified as white have tried to make themselves God on earth. Of course, all they did was drag the world straight into a living hell. When they pretend to be outraged over something, what they're really angry about is what they see as the erosion of their special status. Oh, they demand that. That better be in place. Everybody needs to be reminded that white means special. White means better. If you're white, you do not hear anything you do not wish to hear. You do not see anything you do not wish to see. The society caters to you, and the society knows that it better get rid of anything that displeases you. Black people are not entitled to respect, however. Under white supremacy, the only legitimate and celebrated works of literature or art or media are the ones that promote whiteness. The books, the TV shows and movies, newspapers, and television news programs, they present white and only white as being normal or regular. Anything else must have a modifier in front of it because it's something other than the norm. You never hear anyone talking about white America. They'll talk about the real America. Yeah, because all those black people, that's fake America. That's phony America. They're not real Americans. White is never American. You don't have to put white on the front of American. To say American is to say white. Now, you talk about those other folks, especially black folks, well, you better put a modifier in front of that, lest they be confused with real Americans. Whites never commit crimes, according to the white media, because you never hear about white-on-white crime. It's just crime. In the movies, you have the narrative figure called the everyman. That the guy who's supposed to basically be the everyman, he could be any man out there at all. But of course, under white supremacy, the media makes it clear the so-called everyman is not representative of everyone. He's an archetype meant to embody the universal white man. But beyond that, the everyman is actually the only man. He is the standard of normalcy that is acceptable. And he is also the only man who is considered a man in the society. Anybody else is just a sidekick or just that guy over there. All media is geared toward affirming and promoting white identity under white supremacy, and also geared toward marginalizing and denigrating black identity, and they have to be blatant about it. If you're white, all media is meant to comfort you and validate you. Oh, you don't see any books that make fun of white people or lampoon or ridicule white people being held up as classics, and you damn sure don't see anyone saying we should be teaching this to children. You have images the white folks don't like, well, that needs to be put into the adult section, or it doesn't need to be in this library. You know, I'm not sure that fits the curriculum. That's what they tell you. Nobody's going to be putting on any primetime cartoons about anything that lampoons or ridicules white people. Nah, that's not allowed. This is why you don't see white society praising or giving awards to movies that show white people as down and out. Media is meant to psychologically masturbate the dominant society, and they know this. They don't merely expect media to kiss their behinds, they demand that it kiss their behinds. Media is meant to glorify and reinforce the position that white supremacy is given to those classified as white. It's also a form of mass indoctrination. Why is it that Theodore Geisel's books had been so ubiquitous in the society? It's certainly not because of the quality of his nursery rhymes. His books were, most of the time, sounded like complete doggerel, just completely made up words that made no sense. Well, I'll tell you something. Theodore Geisel's books were widespread for the exact same reason that Amos and Andy was, for the exact same reason the Confederate flag was, for the exact same reason the white studios chose to put their money behind Tyler Perry, for the same reason the fantasy genre calling itself Egyptology became so widespread. Because the publishing world, like the movie studios, is run by and dominated by racists, a bunch of anti-black white supremacists who are on a mission to saturate the society and the world in as many anti-black images as possible. They wanted Giesel's books to be out there, and they had the money to carpet bomb bookstores with his work, to get librarians to carry it, and to push it on young mothers who went to bookstores and to put it into elementary schools. The reason Theodore Giesel's books had become so ubiquitous is because white supremacy wanted them there. White supremacy wanted people to see them and put its huge resources behind that. See, white supremacy is all about choosing who the winners will be. But they also understand that they better hold the line lest black folks put together a substantive counteroffensive. If there's one thing that white supremacy understands, cancel culture may not be real, but black empowerment is. And if they don't hold the line when black folks start to make it where these images that denigrate us and people who have made themselves wealthy off of running us into the ground and lampooning us, and the bastards never get on that bended knee and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm wrong, I beg forgiveness. The folks who refuse to show proper respect for black people, they can be punished. Even if they think that they're safely in their crypt, they can still be punished. See, that's supposed to be the power that only white supremacy has. Only white supremacy is supposed to be able to have the power to, figuratively speaking, dig somebody out of their grave and put their corpse on trial. And that's supposed to be something that only white supremacy can do. But now you got black folks starting to do that. That's the reason why whenever black folks call some white supremacists to account, first thing that you got the white supremacists saying is, oh, well, what about are we going to go back and get the founding fathers? See, they understand how wrong all of this anti-black racism is. They know exactly how big the mountain of racism against us has been. They understand that they got no defense for it. They understand how completely saturated in anti-black racism the entire country has been, everything from its politicians to its founders to even its children's books. They understand that the exact same anti-black racism that made Theodore Giesel a household name in America was also the same racism that the founders of the United States practiced. They know that. So that's the reason why they immediately bring it up. Because it's front of mind for them. They know exactly how many of these racists have been made into cherished figures. And they understand that it's the anti-black racism that made them all so popular for a while. And that if you go ahead and knock down one of them, well, then you got to knock them all down now, don't you? See, the big fear is not cancel culture. Because so far, it doesn't matter who it is that they claim has been canceled. None of these fools ever get canceled. Mel Gibson, he didn't get canceled. Hell, he was starring in movies and even making them while white folks were claiming that he's been canceled. Really, how many canceled people you know of who are making movies and starring in movies? I can't think of any. No, they understand cancel culture is just a phony thing that they came up with. That's the reason why you haven't really heard me throwing the term around before now. There really isn't cancel culture. You could term this as being call-out culture. People get called out. I told you about how Justine Sacco, who, if you let the white media tell the story, especially degenerates like that Ronson character, who wrote his little fiction books, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, you let the white supremacists tell the story. They try to make it seem like, oh, Justine Sacco, she was patient zero for cancel culture. I told you about how that heifer, within only a few months, she was already working for DraftKings. And she was smiling and drinking in a bar. Yeah, she looked real broke up, didn't she? Come on, they know that it's a lie. They just want to see if you're going to fall for it. White supremacy is very good at pretending to be wounded when nobody's even laid a glove on them. But that's the entire point. White supremacy doesn't believe in waiting until it's been wounded before it attacks. Black folks believe in waiting until we're on freaking life support before we decide maybe we might want to do something. White supremacy doesn't believe in it. Doesn't even believe in being touched before it attacks. So cancel culture is not their concern. What they are afraid of is that if left unchecked, this culture of calling out the white supremacist will inevitably lead to punishment culture, because that's what they're really concerned about. Oh, they're not getting punished today, but they know that sooner or later people are going to figure that out. People are going to start going, wait a minute, these bastards never really get punished. Just like with the police. Police thought that they were getting away with something for a while. Next thing you know, all hell started falling down and they're looking and going, wow, we got put on the defensive just that quickly. Yeah, if you don't stop people from calling for the police to be punished, if you keep letting the police off the hook, sooner or later people are going to notice that and go, you know what, damn it, the grand juries will no longer be a place where you can bury these cases. They know that. Sooner or later, someone's going to say it's time to do away with grand juries altogether. At the very least, grand juries can no longer operate in secret. We need to see what's going on because it's obvious that you got these DAs perverting the courts of justice. That's what they're concerned about. You let people have a culture of calling out white supremacy. Sooner or later, they're going to realize the white supremacists aren't getting punished, and it's time for that to change. Because cancel culture isn't real, but punishment? Oh, that is very real indeed.